Man saves drowning baby elephant. The herd's reaction left everyone speechless. Kofi knew the rules of the reserve better than he knew the lines on his own palms. Observe, document, but never interfere. As a senior ranger in the heart of the Kenyan Delta, he had spent 20 years cultivating a professional detachment from the brutal theater of the wild. He had watched lions tear down gazelles without flinching. He had watched droughts wither entire generations of buffalo without offering a drop of water. He understood that nature is a self-correcting system, a cruel but perfect equation where death is simply the fuel for life. To intervene was to play God, and Kofi was a man of science, not theology. But on a sweltering Tuesday afternoon, as the Ewaso-Ngiro River swelled with the violent runoff of a distant storm, the equation broke. Kofi was parked in his jeep, watching a herd of African elephants attempt the crossing. The matriarch, a colossal female named Nia, led the way, testing the depth with her trunk. The current was brown and angry, churning with the force of a freight train. Following Nia was her 6-month-old calf, a playful, clumsy bundle of gray skin named Tatu. Tatu was tired. The herd had been marching for days. As he stepped into the shallows, the mudbank, saturated by the sudden rise in water levels, sheared off. There was no majestic struggle, no cinematic cry, just a sudden, silent slip, and Tatu was gone, swept instantly into the center of the raging channel. And in that moment, Kofi forgot the rules. He forgot his training. He forgot the fact that a protective elephant mother is the most dangerous biological force on the continent. He saw a life being extinguished by the indifference of physics, and he decided to fight back. Before we dive into the terrifying hydrodynamics of a river in flood and the incredible neuroscience of elephant empathy, if you enjoy exploring the deep questions of existence and the emotional lives of the creatures we share this planet with, please take a moment to click the like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us feed our team of writers and researchers and ensures we can keep exploring this beautiful, dangerous universe with you. To understand the stakes of Kofi's decision, we must first understand the family he was about to invade. Nia's herd was a fortress of matriarchal wisdom. Elephants are not just large mammals, they are beings of profound cognitive complexity. Getty Images. Their brains weigh over 10 pounds, 3 times larger than a human's, and are packed with neurons dedicated to memory, social bonding, and emotional processing. They possess a massive hippocampus, the seat of long-term memory, which allows them to remember the faces of friends and enemies for decades. Nia remembered the drought of 1998, she remembered the poachers who killed her sister, and she remembered every safe river crossing in this territory. But she could not predict the flash flood. The water rising in the Ewaso-Ngiro was caused by a storm 50 miles away. It hit the crossing point with a kinetic energy that turned the river into a liquid conveyor belt of death. When Tatu slipped, the reaction of the herd was immediate and chaotic. Elephants communicate using a mixture of vocalizations and infrasound, low-frequency rumbles that travel through the ground and are felt in the feet. Shutterstock. The moment Tatu went under, the air filled with high-pitched trumpeting screams. The females on the bank paced frantically, their temporal glands streaming with temperin, a chemical signal of extreme stress. Nia plunged into the water, thrashing her trunk, searching for her calf, but the current was moving at 15 miles per hour. Tatu was already 50 yards downstream, bobbing like a cork, his small trunk flailing above the surface as he gasped for air. Kofi saw the geometry of the disaster. The river bent sharply to the right about 100 yards down. At that bend, the water smashed into a wall of jagged rocks. If Tatu hit those rocks, the impact would shatter his ribs. If he missed the rocks, he would be swept into the churn, a hydraulic hole where the water recycles back on itself, trapping debris and bodies, underwater indefinitely. Nia was swimming, but she was too slow. She was fighting the drag of 5 tons of body weight. Tatu was light, and the river was taking him. Kofi didn't make a conscious choice. The observer part of his brain, the part that writes reports, shut down. The primate part of his brain, the part that protects the young, took over. He slammed the jeep into gear, racing along the muddy bank, bouncing over roots and termite mounds, trying to get ahead of the drifting calf. He reached the bend just seconds before Tatu. He leaped from the vehicle, scrambled down the slick embankment, and threw himself into the brown water. The shock of the water was like a physical blow. It was cold and heavy with silt. Kofi was a strong swimmer, but no human is a match for a flooded river. The current grabbed him, twisting his body, trying to drag him under. He fought to keep his head up, scanning the surface. He saw a flash of gray skin. Tatu was rolling. The calf was exhausted. His trunk had gone under. He was aspirating water. Kofi kicked hard, intercepting the calf's trajectory just as they approached the rock wall. He grabbed Tatu's ear, the only thing he could hold on to. Up! Kofi screamed, though no one could hear him over the roar of the water. Get your head up. He used his legs to push off a submerged log, shoving the 200-pound calf toward a small, muddy eddy behind a rock. The momentum carried them out of the main current. They slammed into the mudbank. Kofi scrambled for footing, sinking up to his knees in the clay. He wrapped his arms around Tatu's torso and heaved. It was a battle of leverage. Tatu was dead weight, slippery and panicked. Kofi's muscles burned. He screamed with effort, veins bulging in his neck, and managed to haul the calf's upper body onto the solid earth. Tatu coughed, spewing a fountain of muddy water from his trunk, and collapsed, shivering. Kofi collapsed next to him, his chest heaving, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He had done it. He had cheated the river. But then, the ground began to shake. Kofi looked up. The adrenaline that had fueled his rescue instantly turned into ice in his veins. Nia was coming. She had seen him grab her baby. She hadn't seen a rescue. She had seen a predator handling her calf. She had exited the river 50 yards upstream and was now charging down the bank. A charging elephant is not an animal. It is a geological event. She was 10,000 pounds of rage moving at 25 miles per hour. Her ears were flared wide, making her look twice her size. Her trunk was tucked under her chin, a sign she was preparing to trample. She was screaming, a sound so loud it vibrated Kofi's teeth. Kofi couldn't run. His legs were stuck in the mud. He was exhausted, and Tatu was lying right next to him. If he moved, he might startle the calf back into the water. Kofi did the only thing he could do. He stayed put. He raised his hands, palms open, and lowered his head. It was a gesture of absolute submission. He closed his eyes and waited for the darkness. He thought about his wife. He thought about the irony of dying while trying to save a life. He felt the wind of her approach. He smelled the musk of her anger. And then, silence. The thunder of footsteps stopped. The screaming stopped. There was only the sound of the river and the wheezing breath of the calf next to him. Kofi slowly opened one eye. Nia was standing 5 feet away. She loomed over him like a gray mountain blotting out the sun. She was breathing heavily, her chest heaving like a bellows. Her tusks were inches from his face. Her eyes, framed by long, stiff lashes, were locked onto him. She wasn't attacking. She was assessing. This brings us to the theory of mind. For a long time, scientists debated whether animals could understand the intentions of others. Did they just react to movement, or could they understand why someone was moving? Nia had seen Kofi in the water. She had seen him struggle. But now, seeing him collapsed next to her living, breathing calf, her brain was processing a new set of data. She extended her trunk. The tip of an elephant's trunk is one of the most sensitive instruments in nature. It contains over 40,000 muscles and is packed with nerve endings. It can pick up a blade of grass or crush a skull. Nia reached out. She sniffed Kofi. She inhaled the scent of his fear, but also the scent of the river water on his clothes and the scent of her own baby on his hands. She touched his shoulder. It wasn't a strike. It was a caress. She ran the tip of her trunk down his arm, checking for weapons, checking for damage. She hovered over Tatu, nudging him gently until the calf stumbled to his feet. Tatu, shaky but alive, immediately leaned into his mother's leg, seeking comfort. Then the rest of the herd arrived. 5 other female elephants, the aunts and sisters of the calf, surrounded them. Usually, a herd closes ranks around a calf to protect it, facing outward to fight off threats. But they didn't face outward. They faced inward. They faced Kofi. They created a wall of gray skin, enclosing him in a circle of silence. What happened next left Kofi, and the world that would later hear his story, speechless. The elephants began to rumble. It was the greeting rumble, a low-frequency sound that resonates in the chest. It is usually reserved for the return of a lost family member, but they were directing it at him. One by one, the elephants reached out. They touched him with their trunks. They touched his head, his back, his legs. They were investigating him, yes, but they were also engaging in a ritual of acknowledgement. In elephant society, touching is the primary language of bonding. By touching him, they were accepting him. They were erasing the barrier between human and elephant. Kofi sat in the mud, weeping. He wasn't crying from fear anymore. He was crying from a profound sense of unworthiness. He was a member of the species that had hunted them, caged them, and destroyed their habitat. And yet, in the face of his one act of kindness, they had suspended their judgment. They had chosen gratitude over history. Nia was the last to leave. She used her trunk to gently push Tatu up the bank toward the safety of the trees. Then, she turned back to Kofi. She looked him dead in the eye for a long, heavy minute. She raised her trunk in a salute, a gesture often used to signal "I see you." Then she turned and vanished into the bush, the herd following her like gray ghosts in the mist. Kofi sat there until the sun began to set. He realized that the rules of the reserve, observe, don't interfere, were incomplete. They were based on the idea that nature is a machine. But nature is not a machine. It is a community. And sometimes, the only way to be a part of that community is to step into the river. This story forces us to confront the great filter of our own empathy. We often reserve our compassion for our own kind. We build walls, borders, and fences to separate us from them. We tell ourselves that the struggle of other beings is none of our business. But Kofi proved that empathy is the one force capable of overriding the laws of survival. When he jumped into the water, he wasn't just saving a calf. He was saving his own humanity. He was proving that we are not just destroyers, we are also guardians. The herd's reaction challenges our understanding of consciousness. If an elephant can look at a human, a traditional predator, and recognize an act of altruism, then the world is far more awake than we give it credit for. It implies that the universe is not just filled with matter and energy, but with meaning. It implies that kindness is a universal language, spoken by anything with a heart big enough to pump blood. Kofi eventually climbed back into his jeep. He drove back to the station, soaking wet, covered in mud, and shivering. He wrote his report. But in the section for incidents, he didn't write about the violation of protocol. He wrote, "Today, the river tried to take a life." We said no. He never looked at the elephants as data points again. When he saw Nia's herd in the distance, He didn't raise his binoculars to study them. He simply raised his hand. And sometimes, if the wind was right, he would see a trunk rise in the distance, acknowledging the man who had been baptized in the river and accepted into the family. So, the next time you feel small, or helpless, or disconnected from the world, remember the ranger in the mud. Remember the wall of gray giants who stood in silence. Remember that even in the wildest, most dangerous corners of the earth, a little bit of kindness can stop a stampede. We are all just trying to cross the river, and sometimes we all need a hand or a trunk to pull us to the other side. If you found this story of survival, connection, and the incredible intelligence of animals moving, and you want to support our mission to explain the wonders of the universe, please consider checking out our shop. We have posters, notebooks, and hoodies that help us stay independent and ad-free. And if you haven't already, please do like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow and ensures we can keep bringing you stories that matter. Thank you for watching.